Good evening, everybody. And I would like you too when you get your first Facebook account. I guarantee it.
I'm already with you.
Well, thank you very much for coming here tonight again for one of our wonderful ride meetings. I can't tell you how much I always appreciate the opportunity to come and enjoy these wonderful meetings and to see everyone come out and support the Ride for Missing Children and support the work that's being done out of the Utica office of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the tremendous poster distribution program that takes place every single day out of this wonderful community. Thank you so much for all you do to support this terrific work. I had the pleasure of joining you last month, and just as a quick little piece of information to share with you, we were fortunate to see the bust of a major human trafficking, child trafficking ring over the course of the last 4 weeks with the great work of Immigrations and Customs in New York State, and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And that is tremendous work that's being done to protect our kids. And those are the same kids that you see on posters of missing children. So when you see those posters going out, you see those teenagers, they're the very vulnerable kids that get pulled into these human trafficking rings. And I'm so happy to let you know that we had a great bust within the last few weeks. I've had the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker several times before, and I'm a firm believer that people come together for a reason. You are all coming together for a reason tonight and over the course of the next several months, and have come together, some of you, for many years for the greater cause of bringing missing children home. About 5 years ago now, I think it has been, I was helping to run a conference with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI in a little town of Utica, ways down the thruway, focusing on child pornography and a lot of the evil things that happen to kids in the world. And of course, I was working on all the electronics, and I had shut my phone off so that I wouldn't be interrupted. And at the end of the day, you know, there's always that litany of messages that you get to listen to when it's all done. So on my ride back to Rochester, I was listening to my messages, and I heard a voice of a young man on that message. And the voice was of our guest speaker tonight, Scott Berne. And Scott called and left a message that candidly was life-changing for me in many different ways. And that message was really a short but sweet and impactful one. He said, "I'm a survivor of a parental abduction, and I'd love to talk to you and let you know my story." And of course, I dropped my phone and tried to stay on the road and all that kind of a thing. And then when I got back to my office, I called Scott. And we started a journey at that point to really give a voice to Scott's experience. Not that he needed the National Center to do that. He had already done quite a bit in being able to share his experience through writing a wonderful book called Extraordinary Circumstances. And if you have an opportunity to pick it up and read it, it is an amazing account of Scott's life from the view of a child, a survivor of parental abduction back in 1979. Scott has done an amazing job, I think, sharing the word of what parental abductions are all about. He's joined us before here at the Ride for Missing Children, and he's joining us again this evening. Please join me in welcoming Scott Berne.
Hello, everybody. It's really good to be back here. It's been about 2 years. For those of you returning, for those of you who are new, I get up here with no notes, and I just want to speak from the heart so that when you leave here tonight, you realize the purpose in being here is to save the lives of children. And that's why I'm up here giving back. That's why Ed is here. That's why we're all here tonight. I'm going to share my story with you, with the goal that you also leave here knowing that every single one of you will make a difference. By being here tonight, by completing the bike ride, by supporting the National Center, because not only am I a survivor of parental abduction, But something I couldn't say 2 years ago, I am now also a proud board member of the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. Very often I believe it takes one person to make a difference in the lives of others. And Ed Suk, the executive director of the New York branch, has done that for me. He gave me a voice at a time when I wasn't speaking out about my experiences, and he's allowed that final stage of recovery for me. And even though there are many stages to recovery, giving back is the final stage for me. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to share my story with you and hopefully give back. I was very fortunate up to the age of 8 to live in a wonderful suburb of Rochester, New York. 2 loving parents, very normal childhood. And at the age of 8, my parents began to fight. My mother's erratic behavior led to extreme cases of such burning down of our house in Pittsburgh, attempted murder of my father several times, blackmail, bribery of people my father worked with, so that my dad would not be able to get custody of myself and my younger brother. It backfired, and after 2 years of visitation going back between Rochester and Long Island, where my mother lived, after 2 years of that, in a long, lengthy trial, my father received custody of us. At that time, that was in 1979, at a time when fathers usually did not receive custody of children. Little did they know that on the very first unsupervised visitation with my mother, we left Rochester in the middle of the night and we headed to Boston Logan Airport, where we caught a plane and we left the country. And that began our journey for the next 2 years. We would live in 5 countries, 13 different residencies. We constantly changed our names. We didn't go to school. We would leave the residence, leaving everything behind with just a moment's notice. We were extremely brainwashed. I was brainwashed that my father was no longer living, and I no longer had a home in Rochester to come back to. When you're 10 years old and you're with your mother, the brainwashing works. Looking back now, I think, how could I have allowed that to happen? But it's amazing the power that a parent has over the children in a circumstance such as that. We were taught to fear authority. There was no schooling. And after 2 years of traveling, and we ended up in Houston, Texas. We still did not go to school. We had no friends there. And our photos were placed by my father, who I thought was no longer living, in the 1981 August edition of Ladies' Home Journal. A babysitter was reading that, and to my amazement, she showed me the photograph, showed me the article. I didn't even know my father was still alive. She quickly called the FBI, and within a few minutes, the FBI was at this apartment building where she was sitting us, and we were there for hours. We were held by the FBI, and my mother showed up and did not surrender peacefully. As it's vivid images, it's the most dramatic day of my life. As she was trying to escape, the guns were drawn. It was out of a Hollywood picture. At that time, the National Center did not exist. No one knew what to do with a parentally abducted child, and this was 1981. John Walsh did not found the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children until 1984. Immediately, my brother and I, we were separated from our mother, and we were put where no one knew where to put us. We were put into jail. Just like my mother was put into another jail, we were separated, and nobody knew what to do with a parentally abducted child at that time. So we were in a state where my father's custody of us was not recognized by the state of Texas. So we were not immediately returned to a father. The battle ensued, and this was played out in the national and international media for about 2.5 weeks. during which time I spent half of that with my younger brother in jail. And then we were transferred to, I'd call it like a foster care. It wasn't an individual family, but it was a big group home for children who had committed crimes. My roommate was a young boy, I'll never forget his name, Danny, and he had killed both of his parents. The only way, social workers came and went. They had no idea what to do with us. This was unheard of at that time. The only way that I would learn about my mother or my father was by watching Dan Rather on the evening news. This was played out in the national and international media for the full 2.5 weeks. Jimmy Carter had to step in as president and upheld the 1980 Parental Kidnapping Prevention Act. This allowed the state of Texas to recognize my father's custody of us in the state of Texas. And therefore, most of the states now recognize, because of that law, a custody degree from state to state. And in a real undercover operation, my father, along with undercover people, took us back to New York, during which time my mother had already had hits put out to make sure that my father was killed on the way back to New York. Once we got back to New York, there were more custody battles. This was parental abduction at that time was not a crime. My mother was charged with a misdemeanor, never served any prison time, and therefore continued to come at my father and at us. I had to go to school. We started up school again in Pittsburgh, in Rochester, where we were, and had to go to school with undercover police officers. We needed around-the-clock attention. My mother had people try to re-kidnap us. In fact, in an unsuccessful time, 2 of the wrong children were taken and left out on 490 when realized that they took the wrong kids. Life did not get back to normal for a long time until my mother's dramatic suicide, and then I knew that that chapter of my life was over. These are scars that you live with for a lifetime, you don't get over. My goal of speaking out about my experiences is to educate with the hopes of prevention. That's why I'm on board with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Speaking out, making a difference. For surviving, it's about attitude for me. My attitude is, at this time, giving back the way that I've been able to. I would not change anything I've lived through. I have survived. I never refer to myself as a victim. I'm always giving back. And I've done some wonderful things. Ed mentioned the book that I wrote, which has given me experiences of a lifetime. I've sat next to Oprah on her show, many other shows, radio programs, and yes, I still get nervous when I speak. I'd really like to open it up so we can get some questions. I love speaking to a group of this size because I can get some feedback and learn what you want to learn from me, and I can expand on different topics. Anyone have some questions for me? No questions?
How's your brother?
A good question. My brother, he, at the age of 15, he got back into contact with my mother and began to torture my father. I use that word in a dramatic sense because it was a torture. He kept on saying, well, if you don't do this for me, then I'm going to go and live with Mom. And this went on for a period of 1 year, until my father had a nervous breakdown. And this divided my brother and I had to take measures so that my brother went to go and live with my mother, and I never saw him again after that. The important message of all this, there are no winners. I'm not standing up here as a winner. Everyone loses, especially the children. That's why the first sentence of my book, and every time I speak, is we must work together to put the best interests of the children first. It is about surviving, and not so there are no more victims. Okay. Any other questions?